Aryna Sabalenka is the world number one. She holds 4 Grand Slam titles. On any given day, on any given surface, she is the most dominant force in women's tennis. And yet, sometime in late 2025,
Yeah, I mean, this dress was kind of like, let's say, together work, me and Nike. I just threw a bunch of ideas I had and I was able to push them to give me.
she sat in front of a camera and said something that no world number one should ever have to say. She looked directly into the lens and told her own sponsor to do better. She framed it carefully. She talked about collaboration, about throwing ideas at the design team, about pushing for something special. But underneath the diplomatic language was a frustration that had been building for months. The woman ranked first in the world was asking her sponsor, publicly on camera, to treat her like she mattered. Meanwhile,
No thoughts, no emotions, just wanna quit tennis right.
a 20-year-old Filipina ranked 36 spots below her had already been flown to Nike's world headquarters in Beaverton, Oregon. She had spent days with the design team. She had left with a custom collection built around the Philippines' national flower, complete with a hair accessory shaped like the bloom itself. That collection reportedly sold out in roughly 60 seconds. No campaign. No Instagram plea directed at the brand that signs her checks. No pressure required. What Nike quietly handed Alex Eala, and just as quietly withheld from the woman who owns the #1 ranking, is the story that the tennis world has been circling for months. And by June 3, 2026, when Sabalenka sat in the Paris press room with red eyes and told reporters she wanted to quit tennis, the full picture finally came into focus. Eala has been a Nike athlete since 2019. For most of that time, the relationship was unremarkable, a young prospect on a standard deal, quietly developing on the ITF and Challenger circuits. Then came late 2025. Nike flew her to Beaverton, Oregon, commissioned the Sampaguita collection, a bespoke Nike by Eala built around the Philippines' national flower. The hair accessory, the custom colorways, the cultural specificity of the whole thing. She posted the visit on Instagram. Always a blast with my Nike fam. Most of the tennis media filed it away as a pleasant brand moment and moved on. It was not a pleasant brand moment. It was a decision. The same design team that flew Eala to headquarters was producing nothing remotely comparable for the player sitting at the top of the WTA rankings. And when Roland Garros 2026 arrived, those two parallel tracks collided in the most public and unforgiving way possible. The complaint came first, and it came directly from Sabalenka herself. On November 11, 2025, in an on-camera promotional clip, the world #1 said, "People loved it, which is important. And yeah, unfortunately, next season it's not going to be that special for me."
She paused.
Then, somewhere between a laugh and a sigh, she added, "Maybe we should send messages to Nike."
Put pressure on them.
The world #1 was publicly crowdsourcing fan pressure against her own sponsor. Let that land for a moment. To be fair to Sabalenka, the frustration was entirely earned. She was not demanding a private jet. She was not asking for a vanity perfume line or a luxury brand crossover. She wanted what every #1 in sports history has received from their major sponsors, the assurance that her kit was hers. That the dress she debuted on the biggest courts in the world had not already been shipped in bulk to a player 87 ranking spots below her. That assurance, apparently, was not written into her contract. And so when Roland Garros opened on the red clay of Paris in May 2026, the world #1 stepped onto Chatria wearing Nike's clay ballet crimson onesie. The dress her marketing team had positioned as her signature Roland Garros look. On May 24th, Russian world number 88 Aryna Sabalenka walked onto a Roland Garros practice court wearing the exact same dress. Same color. Same silhouette. Same kit. Word for word, stitch for stitch. An ex-post from user Alfola captured the moment with devastating precision. Why they gave Sabalenka's custom kit to Aryna Sabalenka. Hello. Who even is that? 317,000 views in under 48 hours. The answer to that question is the entire story. Pull back to the other side of the Paris draw, and the contrast becomes almost cinematic. Alex Eala arrived at Roland Garros 2026 wearing a Barbie pink Nike kit. Photographed, captioned, and reposted across Filipino fan accounts under the hashtag #PreTinPink. Her Instagram caption that week read simply, "On Wednesdays, we wear pink." No press release. No brand talking points. Just a 20-year-old in pink and a fan base that collectively lost its mind. The Sampaguita collection, Nike's custom by Eala line designed specifically for Eala during her Oregon headquarters visit, had already done its damage by then. Reportedly sold out globally within roughly 60 seconds of release. The Nike by You Full Bloom Sampaguita tee was listed as no longer available on Nike. Calm within hours. eBay listings followed within days. Resellers marking up a drop that Nike's own platform could no longer fulfill. Sabalenka's clay ballet dress, per hardcourt reporting, also sold well, but it was selling as a mass-market retail item. The same dress Aryna Sabalenka was already wearing at practice. One kit moved as a collectible. The other moved as sportswear. Now set those two facts side by side. Monday, Sabalenka goes on camera asking fans to pressure Nike on her behalf. Tuesday, Eala's limited Sampaguita tee vanishes from shelves across the Asia-Pacific. Those are not separate stories. That is a brand telling you, in the clearest possible language, exactly where it has placed its bets. The pattern goes deeper than one tournament cycle. In late 2025, Nike's contract with Eala produced a bespoke cultural product. Custom design. Custom rollout. Custom marketing architecture built around a specific national identity and a specific fan base. Sabalenka's contract, per hardcourt reporting sourced to people directly familiar with the negotiations, does not currently include those same provisions. The world number one does not have royalty rights to her kit sales. She does not have an exclusivity clause preventing retail distribution before she steps on court. She does not have the commercial architecture that Naomi Osaka had, and that, per the same sourcing, Nike has formally decided it will never offer again. The Osaka contract is a closed chapter. No current athlete is getting that deal. And Sabalenka somehow finished 2025 ranked first in the world without the protections that Maria Sharapova had been given a decade and a half ago. That Sharapova precedent matters more than people realize. In January 2008, Daniela Hantuchova walked onto a practice court wearing the Nike dress Sharapova had been set to debut at the Australian Open. The fallout was immediate. Sharapova's team had the contract rewritten. From that point forward, none of her kits went on sale until she personally walked onto court. The dress was hers until she chose to share it. Sabalenka watched the same scenario play out 17 years later in Paris. The difference is that Sharapova had the leverage to fix it. The world number one of 2026 does not. Then came June 3rd. Sabalenka walked into her Roland Garros quarterfinal against Diana Schneider as the defending champion and the tournament favorite. She won the first set 6-3. Clinical. Dominant. Everything you expected. Then the second set reached a tiebreak. She let it slip. And whatever thread had been holding everything together finally snapped. The third set, 0-6. She dropped the last 10 games of the match consecutively. Not a game won. Not a breath taken from 1-1 in the third to the end.
Gone.
In the post-match press conference, she sat in front of the cameras with a voice stripped flat and said, "Just want to quit tennis right now. But we'll see in a few days. Hopefully, I'll get back on track mentally." Roland Garros's official site described her as having gone into a dark place. And in that same Paris draw, in that same tournament, at that same moment, the Filipina in the pink kit was still being photographed outside the stadium by fans who had stayed for hours just to catch a glimpse. The people who had been watching Eala for 2 years, who tracked the Oregon visit, who pre-ordered the Sampaguita tee the moment the notification dropped, who stayed up at midnight for the Paolini match in the pink kit, those people were not surprised by any of this. They already knew what Nike knew. The scoreboard ranks players. The sellout clock ranks brands. Jessica Schiffer has covered the business of tennis fashion for the better part of a decade, reporting from inside the tour for outlets including Hardcourt, Vogue, and Business of Fashion. She is not a fan blogger. She is not a Reddit commenter. She was in Paris in May 2026 with sources inside Nike's account management. And what she reported should be required reading for anyone trying to understand what is actually happening inside women's tennis's most powerful apparel relationship. Schiffer reported directly from a source familiar with Sabalenka and Nike's negotiations. Most players would love to have their outfit sold at retail, and she wants fans copying what she wears. That's the whole point of sports marketing. Read that twice. A source inside the machinery of Sabalenka's own sponsorship world is explaining, patiently, why the world number one's frustration is commercially understandable and commercially irrelevant. The whole point of sports marketing is mass distribution. Sabalenka wants exclusivity. Nike wants volume. Those two things cannot coexist inside a standard athlete contract. And Sabalenka signed a standard contract. Schiffer added, Sabalenka's contract does not currently include those same provisions, though a source familiar with the discussion tells me her team is pushing Nike to adjust it so it's more in line with her ranking and fandom. Her team is pushing. Nike has not moved. And while those negotiations drag on, a 20-year-old on a different tier of the same roster is outpacing the number one in the one metric the brand actually cares about: sell-through speed. This is larger than one kit controversy, and Nike's internal accounting knows it. The brand's women's tennis roster is contracting in real time. IGA Swiatek signed with On Running. Coco Gauff moved to New Balance. Madison Keys is with Adidas. Mira Andreeva is with Adidas. Emma Raducanu has reportedly been in discussions with Uniqlo. The list of elite women's tennis players who chose to leave Nike, or never signed in the first place, grows with every renewal cycle. And the players staying are doing so under contracts that increasingly favor Nike's terms over the athletes. Into that landscape, Nike chose Eala. Not as a charity case. Not as a diversity footnote. As a commercial thesis. A 20-year-old Filipina with a national fanbase capable of emptying a digital storefront in 60 seconds represents the brand's growth market for the next decade. Southeast Asia. The diaspora. A demographic that will queue for a Sampaguita tea at 3 a.m. because it is not just apparel, it is recognition. Every Filipino fan who held that tea understood that Eala's face on a Nike product meant something their parents' generation never got to see. That is the market Nike is courting. And it is a market the world number one's ranking alone cannot access. Sabalenka's Nike contract reportedly expires at the end of 2026. The conversation about its renewal or its replacement will happen in the shadow of a Roland Garros quarterfinal exit, a public complaint about kit quality, and a 60-second sellout from her teammate that Nike will reference in every future negotiation. 6 days before she stepped onto Chatrier in that pink kit and dismantled the number 6 seed, Eala was walking off a court in Strasbourg having lost in straight sets in the first round. 6-3, 5-7. 3-6. A defeat. Not a close retirement. Not a weather suspension. A straight loss in her final warm-up before the biggest clay court event in the world. She did not dwell on it. What she did 5 days later was walk out in Paris and beat Jasmine Paolini 6-1, 7-6, the third top 10 win of her career, in front of cameras that immediately distributed the images to every Filipino fan account on the planet. In the post-match press room, she was asked about expectations, about pressure, about where she stood against the elite. She said, "You see me and you don't expect that I'm going to come up. And I really suck at all other sports." A Strasbourg loss on Monday. A top 10 dismantling in Paris on Saturday. In the pink kit. For the brand that was flying her to Oregon while the world number one was campaigning on Instagram. The clay ballet dress on Aryna Sabalenka's back before Sabalenka had worn it herself. The Sampaguita tea gone from shelves before most of the world had finished reading the notification. Sabalenka in the Paris press room saying she wants to quit tennis in the same week, in the same tournament, in the same brand, as Eala in pink being shared across thousands of Filipino phones at midnight. What this story proves is that the number one ranking is not the same thing as the number one position inside a sponsor's marketing calendar. Sabalenka earned her ranking on court. She has not earned, or more accurately, has not yet been given, the commercial infrastructure to match it. That is partly Nike's failure, Partly a structural decision made when Osaka walked out the door in 2021, and partly a negotiation that is not yet resolved. But the consequences are playing out in public, in real time in Paris. The people who have been watching Eala for the past 2 years, who followed the Oregon visit, who tracked the Sampaguita drop, who stayed up for the Paolini match in the pink kit, they did not need the story to know what was coming. They already recognized that Nike's investment in her was not a marketing line item. It was a statement of intent. The sellout clock just confirmed what this audience knew long before Nike's brand team ever put it in a press release. Here is the question that will define the next 6 months. If you were Sabalenka's agent sitting across from Nike's team right now, do you take the renewal money and negotiate harder for exclusivity? Or do you walk to Adidas, leave the pink throne at Nike, and rebuild the commercial narrative from scratch? That is not a rhetorical question. Drop your verdict in the comments. And if you want to be in the room when the Wimbledon kit reveal drops, when the Queen's Club footage goes live, and when Sabalenka's contract decision finally becomes public, subscribe now. Because this particular story has not reached its most important chapter yet.